Hi, Paul Thompson here from Spitfire Audio. I'm very excited today to show you something that has been highly anticipated. It is a film scoring selection for our Abbey Road One library, and it's called Soaring High Strings. I'm going to dive straight in and play you some, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So as you can hear, it does what it says on the tin. Soaring High Strings, in the lineage of our film scoring selections, focuses on a single task and does that task brilliantly. And for us, this one is about those beautiful, flowing, slightly slower melodic lines. Now, we did also record a fast run transition for this, so that if you do play fast, you do get that as well, so you can use this to create runs. But actually, where we're really focusing most of our effort and firepower is on the way that these long, beautiful melodic lines are traditionally played. In addition to the kind of featured legato patch, you also have an associated longs patch. Again, it's very, very simple, but it sounds beautiful. And then you've got this fantastic, super tight spiccato. Again, very, very dynamic. What are you hearing here? What we've done is we've taken the most common kind of doubling for this kind of part, which is the violin ones and the violin twos playing in unison at the same pitch, in other words. So you're hearing the 16 first violins and the 14 second violins. This is slightly different to the sound that you get if you just double up your firsts and seconds from two separate sets of recordings. And the reason for that is the way that the players move together for the legato, but also it's the kind of intermodulation of each individual player and the room resonating and all of that amazing kind of crosstalk that happens between the instruments. There's definitely a thing that happens when you have players playing together in the same space, where the sound of the instrument is affected in some way by the resonances and the sound waves that are moving around and also that are vibrating the body of that instrument. So having these 30 violinists all playing together, sat in their correct seating positions, does give you this really interesting, very, very kind of rich sound. It's a really lovely, beautiful sound. And if we go back to our legato and just have another listen, even at the very lowest dynamic, you can hear that there's lots and lots of complex interaction going on between the instruments. And as we kind of bring the dynamic up, you can hear the sound kind of becoming richer and richer. It's a really interesting one, and I think that it's quite instructive to compare this with the actual high string sound from the main part of the Orchestral Foundations library, because there's not a huge amount of difference. You do have the violas in here as well. So you have 16 first violins, 14 second violins, 12 violas. yes, that is adding a certain amount of body to the sound. But it's not really changing the sound dramatically. But what we have here, and this is a really useful way to compare these, is we have a very different performance instruction. So if you listen to just the longs from the main library, and then comparing that to our selection here, it's so different. And this is the beauty of this, that when you can focus on one specific thing, you really can dial the sound in very, very specifically to the exact kind of performance that you want. Obviously, as I said, the sound is smaller because you don't have those violas in there. But also, it is hyper-focused on the performance style. And you can hear that as well in the way that the players have played the transitions. Every time, every performance, every take, they're focusing in on the exact style of this kind of performance, this kind of melody. And if you like, you can see that I haven't touched the expression controller at all, but you can use that in addition to further shape the sound, so that as you're coming right down at the bottom, yes, the more you use the expression controller, the more you kind of deviate slightly from the actual real recorded dynamic and where it realistically appears. But it is useful for starting phrases very quietly. And in that way, I would tend to lead, I would lead with the expression controller and then start to bring in the dynamic. So it's just really helping you kind of shape the beginning and end of phrases. That's the main use to me. Let's have a look at the microphones. You've got the usual set of mics in here. Interestingly, you'll see that we now have in the plugin for Abbey Road One, we now have the solo and mute. And that is a little signifier that you've got an updated engine within this plugin. So you've also got a vastly improved CPU usage and voice handling. So you'll find that beneficially affects all of the sounds, all of the selections, the orchestral foundations, everything you're using in this plugin. You'll find that it's a lot more efficient. So we've got the two mixes as before. We've got these vintage sounds. It's definitely worth actually having a quick listen to the vintage sounds, because for this kind of thing, if you want to just get a taste of that Abbey Road violin kind of melody thing, then you don't even need to be using this with the rest of the Abbey Road orchestra or orchestral foundations. You can just add this to your existing palette, and you've got lots of sound shaping option here. So with this first vintage, so you can hear there you've got the RM1Bs in combined with some classic ribbons. Vintage 2, slightly different. We've got this pair of classic ribbons next to the conductor, basically. So it gives you that slightly different sound. Just check this out. And that's really interesting. You can really hear that if we switch to the spiccato, and I'll just give you a quick listen to that. So a subtly different sound, but both of them very useful. Finally, the pop close. Now, as you can hear, that's the mics that are really kind of right in front of the section, nice and wide. And that gives you a lot of sound shaping opportunity. So that's the kind of tightest, most wide sound that you can then direct wherever you want. You can treat it however you want. And if you want the corresponding room to that, you have the pop room mics as well. Absolutely lovely clarity. We've got the standard CTAO. In fact, it's interesting to hear this version of the close compared to the pop close. So as you can hear, that it gives you that much more directional. It's more part of that classic recorded in situ. And when you dial in a bit of the close, just to get a little extra bit of definition, you want it to be in exactly the right place. So that's already pre-set, pre-panned for you. I, of course, love the outriggers, but have a listen to this. So it's a slightly more distant sound, but it does have that really... It does have that really lovely widescreen feel. It's a really, really cinematic mic selection, that one. And then, of course, you've got the spill, which you can use to kind of add a little bit of 3D to any other mic selections you make. So, for example, if we were going with that kind of classic, we'll use Tree 1, which is the M50. We'll use a bit of the outriggers, and then we'll just put in a little bit of the spill mics as well. And with that selection... So you get the idea. Actually, worth having a listen to the legato just on that one. So really lovely sound. You can shape your own sound using the different microphones. I probably wouldn't generally use more than 2, possibly 3, but if you really want to go for it, the whole selection is there for you to mess around with. Now, if we go back to mix 1, I'm going to put these spiccatos up again, and I'm going to show you we have the release control. Now, what we've done here is we've used the same kind of release control, tightness, and legato offsets exactly as they're used in the Abbey Road Orchestra line. So those match up with that. For example, the release is a continuous release that affects both the legato with all the transitions, the releases and everything like that, but also the spiccato as well. So if I dial that right down to the bottom, you can hear that that's very, very tight unless I hold down a note. The reason for that is if you want to play something fast without too much build-up of the decay in the hall, but you then want to have the last note ring out like this, then it's really useful to just hold down the note and you get the full decay play out. But beyond that, you see it's a continuous control. Now, in addition to that, we have tightness to get you tighter into the start of the note, or have a looser. So you get a little bit more of the kind of starting vibration of the string there. I tend to leave that 50%. The settings for these and the legato offset are basically exactly the same as they are on the Abbey Road Orchestra violins, first violins and cellos. So same, any setting that you use for that, you can just use that on this and it will work in exactly the same way. So our legato offset, leave it in the middle, or if you want a tighter sound, you can do that, or if you want it as loose as possible. So you get the idea, you hear more of the transition in there. And again, same settings as on the main orchestra line. All of these selections, as I say, when you've got all of these wonderful mic options, you can use those really easily to kind of plug into any other collection of orchestral samples that you've got. It's very easy to kind of match the sound that you want to the production. But also it means that everything locks in perfectly together. So the orchestra setup in the room is the same as for the orchestral foundations, for all of the selections, and for the Abbey Road Orchestra line. So you can use these as a kind of, I like to think of it as a kind of build your own orchestra approach. You can literally, whatever your kind of personal preferences are for the instruments that you like to use, you can dial into that and really just pick and mix the things that really speak to you. So finally, let's just have a quick look at the legendary low strings and then the soaring high strings immediately after, and you'll get the thing that I'm talking about. We're only listening to mix 1 here, just to keep it nice and simple. There's something very beautiful about the sound of an orchestra in this room, in Abbey Road Studio One. It's a really wonderful sounding room, but it's not just that. It's the fact that there's a kind of cultural attachment to the film scores as well that have been recorded there. So there's some kind of hidden memory that I think comes out when I start playing the sounds that we've recorded in this room. It's really wonderful. It's one of the 2 kind of main sounds that I associate with film scores. And the beauty of Abbey Road is that it's still being used for all of these huge blockbuster films, for indie films, bands record in there. It's just a great recording location, and it's wonderful that it was saved in the 70s, wonderful that it's still there today. In an era where, we've lost a number of studios, having places like Abbey Road is just great, knowing that those spaces to record in, it's so important. The sound that we hear, 50% of the vibe and the sound, the stuff that actually hits your ears has bounced around the room. And so the room is so vitally important to the sound of the instrument. And not only that, the players are inspired when they're sitting in a great sounding room. They play better. They enjoy it. It's more enjoyable to perform. And you can really hear that in the final sound of the instrument. So there we go. The final piece of the puzzle for film scoring selections. Thank you to all of the encouragement that you've given us to kind of record this. Weirdly, it wasn't actually part of the original plan, but somehow it became blindingly obvious that it was a necessary part of the package. So I'm really delighted that we've done it and that we've got that kind of matching part for the string section. It really sounds beautiful. Thank you to all the fantastic players as ever. Thank you for watching and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.